Mark James. How are you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing great, guys. I appreciate you having me. How are you?
We're good. We're excited.
We are fantastic, but someone had maybe not so fantastic things to say about you this morning, and this will be the first time anyone hears it. But go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, once we are not the messengers, this is nothing that. But we have a message for you from Zane Dawson, so we're gonna head.
Oh God,
now
that's scary.
You able to hear that? All right.
Yeah.
Listen here, you piece of Styxx. I remember when you had glow sticks in your pocket, waiting on the right time in your rave music for you to walk through the curtain and crip walk down that aisle. Why don't you get the ring and crip walk to each corner with the lights out and raise those glow sticks in the air and then rave dance to the middle of the ring sticks? Huh? Where'd this tough guy Mark James come from? It's a dance in the ring. Maybe we'll get you back one day, Styxx. Maybe we'll get you back one day.
Do you have any response?
Oh man. Yeah, that was when they were what was it? Sick with it and
boys.
Yes, man. Those first gimmicks are horrible all the time. Like I've seen so many guys. Like I think there was a picture of Walter going around recently of him like years ago. Yeah, man, those first gimmicks always really rough, dude. Like nonstop. So I was really big in the rave scene for years. I lived in California for a while. I was in the Marine Corps, and I got into the rave scene out there. And so when I came here and got into the wrestling business, it was the easiest transition. I was still kind of a raver, and I dressed that part, and I lived that life and everything else. So I was really into music and all that, and it was totally different than anything anybody else was doing out here. Probably for a good reason, though. So, but it was kind of a way in, and yeah, I was Styxx, the Master of Malice. I also had a gimmick called. What's that?
I was told that was with 3 X's at the end.
No, just two. Two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ripping you with the 3rd X.
Probably. I'm not that extra. But yeah, man. And I met those guys, Zane and Dave, down in Fayetteville with Ring Wars Carolina. And guys, back at that time there was like Casey McKnight or Dax Harwood now. Like he was down there, and those two were down there, Moses Manson, Eddie Brown, Hang Time, all those guys. Like they ran a really great promotion down in Fayetteville, and I would just move to the area, so I was trying to get in with them. And I was actually working at a Papa John's at the time, surprisingly. So you guys were talking about meeting through pizza earlier, like one of you ran a pizza place.
Yeah.
And but I was running a Papa John's at the time, and then I moved over to a place called Wings Over and moved to Fayetteville and opened that restaurant down there. So it was a weird situation how we met. I actually came over like I was delivering food to the show one day, and then got into it with a guy with Sean Cruz. Actually, that was my introduction in Ring Wars Carolina. Was I got into a fight with Sean Cruz as he was picking a fight with the delivery guy.
So great.
Yeah. So small world. You guys have already interviewed all these people, so it'd be easy to talk about. And things like that. So sorry, I'll take over the whole show and just ramble. So.
Oh no,
Please feel free to ramble on.
Do it, man. And we're gonna jump around a bit on the interview, but I mean, I guess the organic place to go from here is how do you go from a rave character to the Brute? Like, what's the just talk us through how that happened, because that is such a jarring switch. Like it's not even on the same coin. It's a different coin.
Yeah. So when I first got into business, I weighed probably like 180 something. I just got out of the Marine Corps. I was small. I was in really good shape. But it was skinny. It was like cardio good shape. You know what I mean? Not like a guy that's filled out muscle wise and things like that. But anyway, so I started doing that rave gimmick, and it was a lot of fun. But then, you realize that you're only going to get so far with this. There's only so much that a guy in like sneakers and UFO big pants and like a Superman t-shirt, because I was Styxx and it's the only thing that had an S on it. So it worked for me back then. And but you know, talking to people, and you go to certain tryouts, and I went to a lot of seminars back then. I worked with Simon Dean one time, and you know, he talked to me about getting out of the gimmick and doing something a little bit different. And then Terry Taylor would talk to me about the same thing. It was like, you know, you've got the tools that you may need to get somewhere in the business, but your look is really lacking, and you need to work on that. So that was always the thing. So I made it a point to kind of switch out of that. Honestly, with a guy named Dick Foley or Jimbo with Power Pro Wrestling, he was kind of the catalyst of it, because we were at Waffle House one night and he really laid it out for me. He's like, you know, you're really working hard, but your character, and like this character, I don't see a future in that. You know, what are you going to transition to make it more realistic and more acceptable, I guess, to wrestling fans, because they didn't understand the Raver gimmick at all.
Yeah. Right.
No, who does really? It's just a kid. We're not going to get what Ravers do, but still, yeah, it was one of those things. And we tried a couple other things. I switched over to I stuck with the Styxx thing and did like a man for hire gimmick for a while, and then at Power Pro, we were there for like 3 years down in Sanford, and I ended up doing like a Dudley Boys ripoff gimmick for a while, and I hated it. It was so bad. But I was Double Ray Dudley, or Doodley actually, and but you know, it was way over, and you were going with the crowd, and then I could finally turn heel. Most places had me working baby all the time, so I finally was able to turn heel. And when I did it, I chose just to use more of my real name than going into that character. And from that point on, I basically just worked on the things that you see all the time in the business. Like you'll see The Rock, they're themselves, but you know, 10 times amped up, and Stone Cold is themselves. Yeah, you know, so that's kind of what I went with Mark James, because this is me. But when I'm in the ring, I'm a prick easily. Outside the ring, not so much. I try to be a very easygoing guy, and you know, help people as much as possible, things like that. But I also do that because it gets my karma good, so I can be a real dick in the ring.
Yeah, level it out.
Yeah, you have to. Last week before the Firestar show, there was somebody, their car broke down on the road, and I stopped on the way there to help push them out of the road. And I was like, oh, good, I did this, so now I could be a real asshole tonight during the match. Yeah. And I was. So it worked out well.
So you mentioned Terry Taylor. I think it's kind of should have been an indication when somebody that was known for being the Red Rooster is telling you, hey, man, this might not be the best character for you.
Yeah. And he talked about that too, about how bad that was and trying to make it work and everything. He hated that game so bad. Yeah. But Terry was a great guy. And this was when he was still in working with Impact or TNA at the time. Yeah. So, I mean, it was years and years ago that I was working with a lot of these guys and trying to get in, because where I trained at wasn't the best training school. It's not like I had George South around the corner. You know what I mean? Or that I had Cozone at Firestar around the corner. I didn't have that. I had a couple guys that trained in the backyard in a legit ring, but it was just in somebody's backyard, and we would train there and go do actual shows. So they were only in a couple of years. I didn't know that at the time. So it was all very basic when I got into the business, and I fumbled my way through to get anywhere. So it took me a long time, you know? But anyway, I'm sorry. Again, I'll just keep talking.
Were you always a wrestling fan?
Yes.
What's the kind of the earliest memory of wrestling you have?
So I'm 43 years old now. So my earliest memory of wrestling is the beginning of Hulkamania.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan and Iron Sheik. What was that, 83? I think it was.
That sounds right.
And I don't remember the entire show. I definitely remember that match. And I was such a huge Hogan fan growing up that like everything he did, I was right there. I was, you know, saying prayers, eating vitamins, all that crap. And I'm so far away from that now. But back then it was a thing. And it was really cool because you could see, number one, it was the big like us versus Iran thing that was going on in the 80s. And it was a big thing of us being able to overcome that. Hogan was a big baby, and the stories that they were telling. And then later on in life, when you find out all the little backstory about that, about how like Vern Gagne was trying to pay off Shiki to break Hogan's leg, and how Shiki was like, "No, I'm not doing that." And he told Vince about it, and how it turned into a whole big thing.
Yeah.
But he could have really killed Hulkamania right there.
Yeah.
And like, I may never have gotten to the business at that point. Like, just think of the ripple effects.
The butterfly effect.
Yeah, like it's crazy. So, but yeah, that's my earliest memory for WWE at least.
Okay. So you grow up as a wrestling fan. You join the Marines. You're in California. You get out of the Marines. Where do you decide that, hey, I'm going to move to North Carolina and I'm going to be a wrestler?
Well, I got from while I was still in the Marine Corps, they transferred me back here after my my school to the duty station. I was at Cherry Point.
Okay, out in Jacksonville.
And yeah, close. Cherry Point is Havelock area.
Oh yeah,
Havelock, yeah.
Right between Havelock and
yeah, it's like exactly. So I got there, and I'm like 2 hours away from my parents' house. Parents lived in Sanford, North Carolina. I did not want to be there at all. And then my mom got an aneurysm in her brain. She ended up in the hospital. It was just a really bad time. And I ended up using that to kind of get out of the Marine Corps and get back home to help my parents. I didn't do it the smartest way, but I did it the way I got out. It was what it was. But we moving on forward, I was staying with a couple friends and sleeping on a guy's couch at the time, and they were training to become wrestlers. So it was like Sunday, and they went out to training over at this guy Vinny Vane's place, and Vinny and Bax were the guys that ended up training me. Well, I saw what they were doing, and I sat and watched the whole time, and I was like, "Oh, I can do that," because obviously, you know, you start wrestling when you're 4 years old, and now here you're 21. You finally have the ability to get into a ring somewhere.
Yeah.
Knowing you've wanted to do this your whole life, you're like, "Yeah, I can do this no matter what it is. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna try." I almost broke my neck. That was fun. I ran the ropes, hit one of them with my back rounded, and the rope like ran up my neck and like snapped my head forward, gave me whiplash. And then, yeah, it was just bad. That whole first experience was horrible. But it was one of those, like, I can do this better. So I'm going to stick with it. And I don't care if it hurts. This is my goal. I had two goals in life. I wanted to be a Marine and I wanted to be a professional wrestler. And the Marine one was easy. Did that right out of high school. Didn't even care. Didn't even try to go to college. Just wanted to go right to the Marine Corps. And then the wrestling thing was not so easy. But I ended up finding my way into it. And I've been really happy with it ever since. Now, my issue is I have no freaking clue what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So it was those two things, and that was it. But yeah, man, it's always been fun. It's been cool to be around the business at that age, and then seeing all the younger kids come up now. It's like I've got grandkids that are in the business now, which is crazy.
Yeah. So while you were in the Marines, were you saying the wrestling was kind of always in the back of your mind, kind of like, or was it until the opportunity presented itself that you were like, yes?
Well, I didn't know I could be a wrestler at that point. I was just really close to it. I followed it religiously. All the way up until basically a little bit of the time while I was in California. You just don't have the time for it, you know, like you're doing work and you're at your duty station, you got school to go to, and you know, there are all these little things that you have going on. So it's not like you can just stop everything and sit down and watch Raw, you know, or watch Nitro at the time. I stuck with it a little bit playing video games back then, but watching all the time when you're in a room with four guys didn't always work because not everybody's into wrestling.
Right.
Yeah. So I missed, surprisingly, most of the Attitude Era. I had to go back and like watch parts of that and everything else, but everybody's infatuation with the Attitude Era, I didn't really get to see all that. I caught the end of it where ECW was out and WCW was on their way out, and you know, all that stuff happened. So that's the end of the Attitude Era that I actually saw after I got it.
Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it just brought me back to a place that to get to the point of all this was, I got out of the Corps. I'm sleeping on guys' couches. Neither one of these guys made it in the business. One of them lives in London now. The other guy, I have no idea what happened to him. But they were my intro into it, and meeting Vinny Vane at the time was a great foot in the door for somebody that could really get me to a legitimate wrestling school or place instead of just some backyard wrestling shit that I didn't want to be a part of.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it. And I just kept going every Sunday. I'd be at training. I'd find rides over there. I would do whatever it took to get there at that time. Until like 3 months later, and I thought I knew everything that I could learn from these guys, and started getting bookings and went out on my own and realized that I didn't know shit. And for about 7 years, I fumbled my way through it. Like I said, I met a guy named Johnny Lightning who was nice enough to take me under his wing and bring me out to some different promotions and meet people. That's where I met Rob McBride. This was so many years ago. Like I said, met KC or Dax, however you know him now. Zane and Dave, all those guys, Trey G, George South, all of them back then. So it was the who's who of North Carolina wrestling at the time. But it was a much different, like, wrestling's just in so much of a better place now than it was.
Oh yeah.
So
there's so many.
It's hard to compare.
Yeah, there's so many options for wrestling. Like, I don't know if you follow DPW at all.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, we're big fans of DPW, but there's like so many shows that we've had to miss just because it's the same day as DPW, like AML or stuff like that. So it's just like, not only is there so much wrestling, but it's like happening at the same exact time.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, and it's a great opportunity for wrestlers and fans to both there's so much to see and so much to do, and that like there's so many opportunities to create and for people to watch that creation, which is like really cool because like I'm from Louisiana, and like the indie scene isn't fantastic, so you'd be lucky if once a year maybe Raw might come through, or if you're lucky every 3 years, like one of their dinky pay-per-views might be in New Orleans if you're lucky. So it's cool that nowadays, like we went through this run that probably for like 2 months every weekend we were at a different wrestling show, and it was just like, this is the best. Like, because growing up, like that wasn't always available. Like it's such a nice change of pace.
Well, we're lucky that lucky and unlucky in the same respect, but we're in a state that doesn't require the boxing commission to be a part of what we do. It doesn't require licensing. It doesn't require any kind of permits or anything like that. And I say again, it's good and bad. It's good because we have so many different promotions that are out here, and so many guys that have an opportunity to become really good and have that chance on the indies that they probably wouldn't have had in other states. It's bad because anybody can buy a ring and start running a show.
Yeah.
And it'll end up being some guy goes to training somewhere, or he's working somewhere with somebody, doesn't really know what he's doing, has a falling out with that guy, and then goes across town, buys a ring, and starts running shows just to piss off that other guy, and hires all his friends that none of them know what the hell they're doing. Yeah. So North Carolina for years has been fighting against that type of booking and that type of show, those outlaw shows that everybody talks about. But those type of shows, they help and they hurt us. They help us because indie wrestling is out there, and more people are talking about like lower level wrestling than WWE, AEW, all that stuff. But it hurts us because they go in and they ruin buildings. They ruin relationships with places. People don't pay for the building, or they'll break stuff in there. And then the legitimate promotions either have to pay higher fees to get into the building, more insurance coverage to be able to get there, or they just can't use the building at all because some other jerk has went in there and ruined the place. Right. You know? Yeah. So when you're in a state that's got like 200 some odd wrestling promotions just in this one state, and they're all trying to run everyone.
Given that there are so many, what do you think are the ones that people should keep an eye on and very much try to go to, because they are the legit companies that people should invest their time and money into?
Well, I'm gonna have to say anywhere I work at, just because why would I work somewhere? So I do have a lot of love for like Firestar Pro Wrestling and everything that Kozon is doing there with all those kids. Like, I'm amazed in the talent that Kozon's putting out of that school. Just incredible. So you got Firestar, AML, DPW. Obviously, we've already talked about all those. RWA at a High Point is a really solid promotion that a lot of people look at as kind of an outlaw thing, just because people don't like Julian. But he runs really quality shows, and the guy draws like 400 or 500 people every time. So, I mean, it's a solid show. PWX, when it was still around, that's gone now, I guess.
That was my first indie show ever. Was a PWX show at like, it was at me and my dad when it was like at a bar. Like, it was just this random bar, but it was like John Schuyler was in the main event. The American Wolves were on the card against the Bravado Brothers. Like, it was like, it's what kind of sold me on like, oh, I love this. And PWX was such a fun spot.
So I can tell like you guys are into the newer style of wrestling a little bit more, probably. Like the places that you talk about are a little more, I guess, strong style based type wrestling spots than some of the old school style places. Like AML is fun, but they're a lot more old school wrestling.
Yeah.
We've been to a few of those, and like I think that's true to a certain extent, but I think so much of what's out there now, unfortunately, like that is the direction sometimes companies take. Like that definitely is the DPW attempted it, but there is so much value in an AML and like these other companies that
just love wrestling.
Yeah.
The chance you can get to watch it, it's great. I mean, there are bad shows,
sure,
but for the most part, wrestling is wrestling, and it's this thing that we all agree to love. Whether it's old school style or they're doing flips, like I can like freak out as much for like a tombstone as somebody like diving off of, like, we went to a DPW show, somebody took a dive off the rafters, like, and it's all about where it is in the match and how the story's told. I think that storytelling is the common thread throughout all of wrestling.
Yeah, was that Malachi?
Yes.
Yeah. God, that kid is incredible.
Yeah,
he's so good, man. Him and Jackson Drake, I've known those kids since they were like 13, training over at Cozones, and I just talked to him last week, and I had a killer match at Firestar, and it'll be on YouTube soon. I can't wait for everybody to see it.
Yeah, he's so good.
Those guys are incredible.
Oh yeah,
I don't see how they're not signed yet, honestly. Yeah. Like those two specifically, like Moss, Alexander Moss, like Tim, guys like that. Like, there's a reason why they should be down here doing this crap. Those guys deserve money.
Yeah,
you know.
We were talking about that just last week, that like certain guys, like, it makes no sense that, okay, if we're saying that it's not going to be WWE, it's not going to be an AEW, why isn't an Impact, why isn't a MLW, like, why isn't these bigger promotions like nabbing these guys up? Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's only so many spots, and you know, maybe they have something already similar to that. You know, I talk to a lot of guys, and I try and tell them, like, you have to be more than just the athletic guy. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be more than just the guy that can do flips or do this spot here or do this here. Like, you have to understand the psychology of what we're doing and the little things that make matches mean something. And I'm not saying the little things as in like remembering to like build your matchup to something, or remembering the exact technique to do something. It's understanding that the psychology of the match goes in a way that you don't always have to fly at people all the time. Like, there's buildups that happen to it. And like, for me, I've always tried to, because I can do some of those flips and things like that. I don't normally, but I'll do a BME every once in a while just for the hell of it. I did cheerleading in high school, so I actually worked with I did NC State cheerleaders, and they would bring us out to like some gymnastic places. We would work on tumbling routines and things like that. So I've got that background to be able to do some of these flips and things.
Yeah.
But I was also like 350 pounds for the longest time. So I didn't need to do any of that stuff, and I still don't need to. It's not a necessity. now I'll use it to like miss or set up something else in the match or something like that. It's a lot more fun. But it's like these guys, like a lot of the younger kids, need to hopefully figure out the times that, you know, you need to do these flips and you don't need to do these flips. Like you slow down and tell that story.
So it's that idea that everything is earned. You're building up to every moment. Everything like kind of has to have an idea behind it.
Yeah, and it should, because how else are the fans going to follow it? And what other purpose do you have of doing this stuff?
Yeah,
you know, like you can't just be. I don't know, man. It's hard to really like if you get into psychology of matches and you think about how like everything that it takes to put things in places to where they can make moments for people, because that's how I think. I can't come up with 50 different sequences and remember all that stuff. I can't call matches in the back and do all that. Like you can ask Tip when he and I got together and wrestled a few months ago for the first time. I walked up to him and I said, I have 2 moments that I really need to happen in this match. And I explained those to him. And I was like, how can we build to those moments and make it happen? You know, and like that's kind of the difference in how I look at matches compared to like some of the younger kids when they're coming in. They're just throwing out spots, you know. And it's a different feeling. Like you can bring the crowd different places, and yeah, I may not get the crazy like this is awesome chants all the time, but you know, I've gotten plenty in my life of just doing my stuff, you know, being intense, being realistic. Things the Dawsons are great at, you know, Zane and Dave are probably those are other guys that they absolutely should be signed somewhere. I don't even understand.
Yeah.
Jesus. There's not a better tag team in the area anywhere, really, than the Dawsons, and that's from everybody. Like they go up for seminars and workouts. They get put over. You know, Dax constantly puts them over. Of course, they're really good friends, but you know, talented people stay together. So,
absolutely.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So you said you primarily, or at least these days, you're kind of working like the heel angle where you're kind of just talking shit. And is that more like better for you to like make somebody hate you than to make them love you?
All right. So I don't have the prettiest face, and I'm not a young guy that's got a 6-pack. That's, you know what I mean, that looks like that. So yeah, it's a lot easier for me to piss people off than it is for me to get people to like me, you know, because usually there's something else that goes along with that. However, I've worked baby a lot during my career, mostly when I was younger and things like that, and a lot of my singles. And I do it typically because there's not a lot of people that are willing to do to work as a good guy and do it the right way. And there's so many heels out. Everybody wants to work heel because it's fun and it's easy and you get to yell at people and piss people off and say things that are on your mind. And that's always fun. But like the babies make money. You know, the babies sell merch. The babies, like they have people that that care about them to a different level than you care about a lot of heels, you know? So it's fun to be able to do both. I personally love working heel. For the same reason that most people do. Again, it's easier. It's way easier to piss people off than it is to get people to like you. And then also like the sympathy angle, I'm bigger than a lot of the guys that I wrestle. It's really hard for me to get that underdog sympathy that I can help someone else get a lot easier. You know, so I'd rather work with a guy, beat him down, get him to a point that they look like they're crushed, and then give them that really awesome hope that gets the crowd right back behind them, gets them, you know, right with that underdog. And then, you know, now we're off to the races. Now we got a match going.
That's awesome. That's really great.
You ever had an interaction with a fan that where they've tried to take it too far? Or you ever had to push somebody back in line?
All the time. And I don't understand. My wife and I talk about this all the time. Like, why do they choose the biggest guys on the card? all the time to start something. Let's see, fights. I had one guy that pulled brass knuckles on me in the front row, and I had to hit him before he hit me. It was as a match was starting. I was like walking around the ring to get into the ring, and I saw the guy pull out the nuts. So I just fucking laid him out. Sorry.
Don't apologize.
So I laid him out, and then there was another guy that he was actually drunk. This was at a place called the UWC, and it was myself and Cole Cash D, who's unfortunately not with us anymore, against this guy Apollo Steed and Donnie Steamboat, who's also unfortunately not with us anymore. And at the end of the match, I had the spot where I was supposed to do a dive over the corner and land on all three of the guys, and then we would fight our way to the back from there. Well, two of the guys fought their way to the back. Me and Apollo were still out there, and this fan came up, and he was drunk, I guess, from earlier in the night. And he just walked right up the entranceway and grabbed Apollo and hit him with a stunner. Out of nowhere, dude. I'm like, what the hell? And this fan, like one of the wrestlers' wives, saw me as I was trying to leave and was like, Mark, this guy's going to do something stupid. And he's just like walked right past me, behind me, to hit Apollo with a stunner. Apollo thought it was me, so he went with it, thankfully.
Oh, he sold it.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Stole the whole thing. And then I beat the hell out of this guy from where he was until I threw him face first into an oak door and broke his nose on the way out of it. Yeah, so I've had a few over the years. Couple. Again, like you're a big tough guy, and everybody wants to try and test the biggest guy in the yard. And like I'm not a heel, like I'm not one of those cowardly heel guys, So like I'm not just gonna sit there and take that either. Like I'm gonna go back at the guy. And that usually doesn't help any. It always turns into some kind of thing. But yeah, I've had to have security take me out of buildings before. We caused riots down in South Carolina. Like it's so much fun.
Yeah. That's casually mentioning a riot.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get that many people, the fun for me in wrestling is being a puppet master, and being able to understand that if I do this in the right space, then everybody here is gonna friggin' hate it.
Yeah.
No matter what. Like there's not a redeemable thing about anything I want to do in that ring. I want to be just a vile individual.
It's a brute thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm a smart ass and I try and be funny and things like that sometimes. And, it doesn't always work. And I oversell people sometimes. But,
yeah,
it's all in the business, man. You're trying to make everybody look good and have a good time yourself, too.
So. I think the best example I've ever seen of what you're talking about is we were at an Elevation show, and it was Bojack versus Jason Kincaid. And
cool.
Jason Kincaid has his manager that comes to the ring in a wheelchair to kind of as his manager, and he kind of like rides him in on the wheelchair. Bojack went around the corner and kicked this kid in a wheelchair right in the face and just like laid him out. And that I like, because I've never seen Bojack like work a heel really. So to just see that, it was just like, okay,
yeah,
the crowd is now.
It was crazy because when Bojack came out, my initial thought was like, there's no way he's gonna. Is he the heel? He's not gonna get. It's about like there's no situation. His mom is here.
Yeah,
like
his mom's
there's no
selling cupcakes.
situation where this. When he did that, my jaw dropped. I'm like, oh,
that was one of those things. I was like, that is not something that I ever thought I would see in a wrestling match. But that's.
You got to take it to that level sometimes, though. Especially a guy like he's so over everywhere and he's so damn good. Like my son is a huge Bojack fan. My kid, right? So if ever, and I hope there is going to be a time that him and I get to fight each other in the ring.
That'd be great.
I think so too. Except I feel like my kids are going to pull for him instead of me, and that's not as fun. But dude, like I couldn't imagine him working heel. I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere.
It was pretty
So-
solid, and it was one of those deals that like this almost makes more sense because he's the bigger guy.
Yeah.
Like that it makes sense that he'll just work a guy down for 15 minutes, then the big comeback, and like it made a lot of sense. I'm like, whoa, I can't wait for him to be able to have a platform to do this on a much bigger stage, because it could make some money or make someone else a lot of money.
Man, it could at some point, and a lot of these things can. Like, there's so many good stories that go on around here. Just specifically, like just in Firestar, we've had for about the last year, we've been telling a story between Jackson Drake and Jay Malachi.
Yeah.
And like it's been a great angle this whole time, but people don't follow it as well because it's on the indies, you know. It's all on YouTube though. Firestar Pro Wrestling Classics YouTube, if anybody wants to watch it.
Yeah.
And then TDT and Moss, same thing. It's been probably about a year. They've been feuding for that championship at Firestar, and like there's certain places that do it. When we were at Power Pro down in Sanford, I loved being able to tell stories and do angles. My mom always would be there too. I grew up in Sanford, so it worked out pretty cool. I ended up having her get kidnapped one time as part of an angle.
Just casually.
Yeah, this guy Tito and I were fighting. We used to be tag team partners, and we were fighting for the championship there. He turned on me and like hung me over the top rope, like literally hung me. With this like bull rope that he had, and then we just kept kind of going up from there, and we turned it into he got suspended for that, and his way back in was he was going to come after me personally and like make me fight him. So he, at the end of the show, my mom used to ride up there with this other guy. My mom's in a wheelchair, and she used to ride up there with a friend of the family, and I would come in from out of town. Well, at the end of the show, I'd go out and I'd say bye, and she'd get in the car and she'd drive home, you know, or ride home with him. Well, I said my goodbyes. I go inside the building. She's leaving. Tito comes out from on the side of the place in front of all the fans and everything else. And we used to keep cameras out there to ask for like feedback for the shows and get fan reaction and all that stuff to put over the next show. So when there's a camera out there during this part, nobody thinks twice about it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Tito comes out, takes out Foley, takes out the guy that was driving the car, throws him somewhere, and then just jumps in the car and takes off with my mom. Right? Fans are losing their minds. I got guys coming back to the locker room, running in. Tito just stole your mom. He kidnapped her. Oh my God. I'm running out the locker room. I'm not paying attention to anything. I literally ran over a fan, just ran right through him, put him on his ass, ran all the way outside after him. And we turned it into a whole big angle to work into a cage match with him and I.
That's awesome.
You know, but it's just about the guys that like I would rather tell the story. And I would rather build to something that's going to be really, really cool and have a great payoff, like the Sami Zayn bloodline thing that's going on now.
Yeah.
I don't think I could tell stories that good, but like great payoffs in matches. And I would rather do that than only be known over like this one spot I could do. You know what I mean? Or like have to jump off of things to get that reaction. Like I'm probably not going to be as over or like the star caliber that these guys are or what have you, but I've never looked at myself as that. I've always looked at myself more of like a Arn or Ole Anderson type. You know, I'm a good carpenter in the business. I'm a guy that can help guys get to.
Yeah.
So, what kind of dog you got?
He is a blue tick, Jack Russell, and black lab mix.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a combination.
It was a hunting dog that got in with the house dog, is how they described it when we got him.
Nice. That's awesome.
Hold on, I'm gonna see if I can get him to stop 1 second.
Oh, it's cool, man.
Awesome. So we've kind of talked about your career, debuting as Styxx, who you are now. With your place in the wrestling like landscape of North Carolina, where do you see yourself in 5 years, and kind of where do you see the landscape of wrestling as a whole in North Carolina in 5 years?
In 5 years, I see myself acting in movies and television shows and never stepping foot in a ring again. Hopefully. No, I'm probably going to do some behind the scenes stuff for a while. I'm already doing agent work. I do Hit Club Pro and Let Wrestling Live. I've done producing and agent stuff with them. Helped out at AML one time, once or twice, and then Firestar and things like that. So that'll probably be my role moving forward after this. I've got way less time in front of me in the business than I do behind, and as much fun as it is, I've already, like, I took a break for about 3 years. I lost a bunch of weight during that time, had a couple surgeries and get my life together. And during that, like, I was done. I was done. I worked with C.W. Anderson in my last match. I was really happy with it. It was a good way for me to go out on my own accord, basically. But COVID hit and I lost a bunch of weight and my kids got into wrestling again. And Punk came out with AEW and that was it. Like, my son wanted me to get back into the ring at that point. So I was like, yeah, screw it. Why not? Because he's 9 now. And when I was doing it big, he was like 2-3 years old. And I quit when he was like 5.
That must be so cool for like the relationship with your son, because that's that really into wrestling age. That's when it's bigger than life and it's like superheroes. Like it's so big that must be really nice to have that relationship, then how it transcends into wrestling. Like that's really cool.
Well, it was great when I first came back because I was baby everywhere, and then I would have him like come out to the ring with me and stuff like that. Like, he would be able to lead me out to the ring during my entrances, and he had a blast doing that. But now Dad's a heel, and it's not as fun.
How does he feel about that?
He does not like me sometimes. So our daughter is cool. She's 18. She gets it. She'd rather me work heel. My son, Mini Brute is what we call him, or Chris, really. But all right. So I turned on Victor Andrews in Wilmington about a month ago, and now it's setting up for a storyline between Victor and I. And Vic was in a cage match with Jake Logan, and at the end of the cage match, he's coming out. I come out to kind of help him, and then as I'm like pulling him out of the cage, I slam the door in his face. My son wouldn't talk to me for about 3 days. So he was not happy at all. So it's touch and go sometimes with the wrestling, and then I can kind of get him talked back into it. He's like, yeah, I know you're not really a bad guy, Dad. I just get really mad at you when you do these things. So it is what it is.
Maybe in a couple of years, Victor Andrews' son and your son can have a rekindle that story again. That'd be pretty cool.
Yes, it's gonna be great. I can't wait. Or they could be a good tag team. They're about the same age too.
Does your son want to be a wrestler? Is that?
Yes. Yes. He is dead set on being a wrestler. Like, he has no backup plan. So I'm trying to develop a backup plan with him, but
that's that thing that like that is kind of the common theme in these interviews, is everyone like that was always their plan. It's like, yeah, I didn't have anything else, but I mean, like, that might be the mentality like you have to have to a certain extent, but backup plans are so important.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, if you don't have that mentality of this is what I'm doing, then the first time you get hurt, you're done.
Yeah.
You're out. Or the first time like something's a little bit of an inconvenience, then you're out. Like, I had to go all in no matter what first thing. And if I didn't go all in, I'd probably either hurt myself or hurt somebody else. And I don't know. It just wouldn't. I don't think it would work out the same way for somebody who's not devoted to it. Obviously, you guys wouldn't see him, because that guy never makes it on shows, or he doesn't get trained well enough to be able to do the things that he wants to, or he'd be on some backyard show out in the middle of Burke County or something like that, and nobody would care about it. So like, those guys weed themselves out a lot of times. The guys that you see and that are at the places like AML, like PWX was, like DPW, Firestar, stuff like that, are the guys that are dedicated. And it's really cool to see all that, especially at the like training school places now.
Yeah.
Who do you think in the current landscape of North Carolina, and it can be outside North Carolina too, of just guys that maybe aren't getting enough recognition or that people should keep an eye out for?
Well, hell, we've talked about most of them already. Man, Bojack, Lucky Ali, Rayhan Untez, Movie Mike, the guys that you've interviewed so far. Like Victor Andrews is a killer, man. That guy's everywhere. He lives up to his name, obviously. Sean Cruz is really making waves, coming back again, but he's also at, later on in his career, kind of like I am.
Mhm.
So guys like that, I'm always intrigued in seeing, like I've got a new tag partner, Alex Evans, he's 15 months in, basically.
Wow.
But he's great, dude, and he drives from Raleigh to Greensboro 3 times a week to work out and to train and to be motivated and be in the ring and be around it. And then he's driving outside of there to, like that type of dedication wasn't around really when I was starting this stuff. And we didn't have schools like they do now that are, first of all, we didn't have the indoor places around the state like this that we could just be 24 hours a day or, 365 days a year, you could be inside training.
Yeah.
So like now it's a lot more prevalent, but you see guys, Lucky Ali, Alexander Moss, Jay Malachi, Jackson Drake, Alex Evans, really awesome. Grant Watts, guy I've wrestled a lot recently, is incredible. Just very, very technically sound. He's going to be a guy that's like a Malenko or Benoit or something like that. Hopefully without all the crazy stuff they wanted. But let's see who else. And there's so many people.
Yeah.
So many people. Joe Black. If you're not watching Joe Black, what the hell is wrong with you?
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. Let's see who else. Cozone's great. Let's see. Colby Carino just got signed. I mean, there's so much talent in this area for one, and just in the state in general. And there always has been. North Carolina has always been a hotbed in the mid-Atlantic wrestling area. Has been a hotbed for outstanding talent. So I'm not surprised that it's just continuing.
Awesome. Well, we want to make sure that we give you time to plug your upcoming matches, but we heard that you also had something you wanted to say to Grant Watts and Stephen Meeks ahead of your match coming up in June. So the floor is yours. Talk your shit if you've got it.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've wrestled Grant a few times recently, and Grant kind of knows what the brute's about. I've beaten him up on numerous occasions now, so I don't think it's going to be any different. Grant, you tried to bring Cam Cano out last week. Dude busted my eye open in our match, like made me bleed through that. I got a black eye now dealing with this. So, dude, I don't know what Grant's trying to do. He's coming after me and Alex, and he's a little pissed off because we keep screwing him over in matches. But Stephen Meeks is not the guy. I can tell you, the wannabe Johnny Saint, hippie, I'm gonna hug you, love you so big guy. I don't know that would be the one that I would want for my teammate against Brutality. So, guys, feel free. Come with everything you can, and we're basically going to laugh at you and beat the holy hell out of you at UPW.
Awesome.
Well, there we go.
I think we have been talking to Grant. We're gonna have him on sometime in March, and then we'll let Stephen Meeks offer a rebuttal as well. But if I were those guys, I'd probably be a little worried going into that match.
Yeah, I don't know if hugging is going to be the answer for this one.
We love you, Stephen, but
I give great hugs, and like my bear hugs are incredible. So I can't wait to give that guy such a big hug right there in the middle of that ring. He's gonna feel it for days. I can't wait.
Awesome. All about feeling the love here on Live Laugh Lariat. And we of course want to be very cognizant of your time. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it's been great. feel like we could talk to you all day. You're so knowledgeable about everything, and it's just really been a fun conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I've been lucky enough to be around some really, really intelligent people in the business. And I've met everybody I've watched on television growing up. I've been able to work with a lot of guys that I've watched on television growing up. I said my first match I remember seeing was Hogan and the Iron Sheik. And then I was able to work with Sheiky on a show. Like, I think I was probably 6 months in the business at the time.
Wow.
I was one guy being 10 minutes later away from him being my manager for my match. That would have been cool as hell. But yeah, man, I've been lucky enough to do that. And I'm not a guy that I don't know, it's weird. Again, doing this 20 some odd years and being on the indies the whole time, you know, you hear guys talking about guys like me. I try and be the opposite of that old pissed off vet that nobody wants to talk to anymore. Like I'm trying to bring a lot more positivity into the business, especially around what I'm doing. Back with, you know, I had to go through therapy and you know, meds now and stuff like that, and trying to figure out the stuff that was going on. So, you know, I'm a different Mark James than I was probably 5 years ago. The guy that a lot of people met back then is not the same person right now. And I'm coming at it from a better place that I want to help more people. So, you know, my social media out there at realmarkjames, basically everywhere. And I want to put this out to all the young wrestlers out there. I'm not great at watching matches. I'm very slow at getting back to people for that, but I'm willing to help anyone who's willing to get help.
That's awesome.
So like, pick my brain. I love talking about wrestling. I'll talk your head off. Obviously, I've been talking most of this hour, and you know, I really want to help people, and I do my best to try and, like, when I talk to Tim about stuff and not just wrestling, but about life in general, you know, I want to be able to help them through a lot of the stuff that they're going through in lives and get them to better places so we can all be happy and we can all wrestle and enjoy it and go home safely and make the fans happy too. So that's my whole goal. So anybody that needs to reach out, feel free. My inbox is always open. And if I don't like you, I'll tell you.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time. I hope you have a great Saturday, and hopefully we'll see you sometime soon at a show.
Definitely. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you having me. Sorry to ramble through your show like that.
Oh,
that's
no,
the best kind of show.
That's the only kind of show we want to have.
People aren't here to listen to us talk.
Awesome. But I really do appreciate it, man. Thank you. It's a great show.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one.
All right. You too.